Aloha! Thank you for joining Island Time from the Sharpest College Football Podcast. This is our Week 5 preview. This is BuckMetrics, joined as always by Robert Martin, and always for Island Time by our guy Duck. Gentlemen, I think we had a pretty good week last week. No official tally since we just kind of chewed the fat and tried to sound smart, but going to get a little more official now that we have dual model picks that we've gone over in the Week 2 preview. And now we get kind of the big games that we didn't go over, and also the ones where my model and Robert's model disagree. Robert, are you nervous here as Duck plays arbiter here?
Yeah, he's going to be the final judge, jury, and executioner here. Be like, yeah, this is
Wow.
right. This is not executioner. It's not like we're going to put down someone's model and not going to take someone's model behind the shed after this is done and shoot it. But yeah.
We're getting dark, Robert, here. Firstly he said show no mercy to certain teams of the polls. Now he's just going to execute one of our models. My gosh, Duck, good to see you. I hope you had a good weekend.
Yeah, not too bad. And Week 5 is just around the corner. Starts tomorrow night. Man, this season goes quick. Already Week 5.
It does. A little longer though with the two off weeks for every team though, so that helps quite a bit. So. All right, let's get into the games. Like I said, we're going to start with the ones where my model and Robert's model disagree. Let's start with Louisville giving 3 at Pitt, and I'm going to rely on you guys to keep me honest if these lines have moved. What I'm seeing here, aside from the fact that my model is telling me to bet on Pitt, which is really not an encouraging thing, so I'm hoping that Robert, you're going to talk me out of it. I hope Duck can actually just kind of throw some holy water on this and make this one go away. Passing games are about the same. I guess I can buy that. Year 2 of Cade Bell at Pitt makes sense. Louisville better running the ball. A lot more explosivity. Thank you. He said in English eventually on Pitt. Much better pass defense here for Louisville, which is surprising. Especially, I think, if we asked Isaiah and the Ron English experience that he had at Purdue, he might be a little surprised by that. Better run defense by Pitt, so things look like they kind of on the descriptives break about even here. I don't see really big advantages in terms of my power ratings here, so I guess this just kind of comes down to venue adjustment and venue of the game here. Not wild about my model saying Pitt's going to win by 6, although I think Robert's model of 48-30 in favor of Louisville is a little aggressive too, so I'm kind of just throwing my hands up here. Duck, what do you see on this one?
Situationally, I think that the situation favors Pittsburgh. They're coming off the bye. They're coming off of a game against West Virginia in the rivalry, the backyard brawl, that they completely gift-wrapped and handed to West Virginia. They were up 10 with 4 minutes to go and couldn't hold on. And they're playing with revenge from a game last year that they lost 37-9 against Louisville and really looked embarrassed. They had some turnovers that led to some quick scores, and it just was really not a good showing for Pittsburgh. So I think when you look at Louisville's pass defense specifically, they've played 3 opponents that can't throw the ball very efficiently. Eastern Kentucky's an FCS, and they're usually a strong offensive FCS team, but they're way, way down this year. And then you look at JMU, who's a run-heavy bunch, and that's what their bread and butter is, getting the ball moving downhill on the ground. And same thing with Bowling Green. They want to play big on big, use 2 or 3 tight ends, and run the football with the Eddie George system. And Drew Pine is their quarterback, as I'll remind everybody. So You've played 3 opponents with weak pass offenses, and now you're facing this blazing fast speed Pittsburgh, throw it around, and you're on the road in league play for the first time. It could look a little jerky for Louisville. We've seen a lot of teams already this season go on the road for the first time and just not be as well oiled as they are at home. So I'm not absolutely in love with this game at all, but I would 100% bet Pittsburgh only.
Wow, I would take you back to how you started, and it's like, surprise, surprise, Pat Narduzzi gave away a game. That's why I'm just not hip on this. Robert, how do you feel about your model? I guess the first thing I'd say is, as I thought would happen, I wouldn't say I officially predicted it, but Miller Moss a much better fit for what Jeff Brom does than we can see at USC's offense is taking off too. They have a better fit too. Moss is basically where he fits better, and I think your model's probably seeing that. Yeah.
Yeah, just a quick note, this is up to 4.5. It's a small move, not a huge move, but that's... Man. I think it's interesting I'm never, and I think anybody in this podcast is particularly a huge fan of Pitt. We've never really been like, oh man, can't wait to go bet out in Narduzzi this week. But at the same point in time, yeah, we talk about Louisville's relatively soft schedule, their toughest one being JMU. Pitt hasn't had the particularly, like, their toughest opponent was West Virginia, and they did lose to them. They haven't really had a really tough schedule either. So this is going to be a really, like, resetting expectations here. Hey, how good are these teams? Louisville to Pittsburgh, not a particularly huge road distance, a relatively short trip there, where I could take a bus pretty comfortably. So I wouldn't worry about it too much. But again, I want to say that mine feels right, but this line is a bit stinky, right? It's just, okay, why is it only 3.5? Louisville should be much better than Pittsburgh, right? The line feels like a trap line, and my line feels like what it should be. But the fact that it is only 3.5 means, okay, the books know something. The books know something here. So that's my concern on it. But no, generally, I think it makes a lot. My line makes sense, but I think yours is maybe a bit. I don't think I'd make Pitt the outright favorite here. My model really likes Louisville for some reason. I'm not completely sure why. It has them ranked relatively high, but like easily in the top 25, which maybe they should. There's an argument for them being at least in the top 30. But no, I don't hate the play. I don't hate a play on Louisville, but a smaller play, not a big play.
I'll say something else too. Louisville
Please.
has faced zero resistance from opposing defensive front sevens. They have had they have had very little pressure in the face of Miller Moss. You look at Pittsburgh this season and the tackles for loss and the sacks that they've registered. They call their three linebackers the Sharks, and they have three good ones, and they're going to come after Louisville's quarterback in this game. And there's just going to be some adversity here that they haven't faced by any of their other opponents. Louisville could very well be a stronger team, but I don't know how I would feel comfortable laying points on the road, lining up against that defense. I just would not want to do that.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, when it comes to Narduzzi too, you kind of just have to throw all logic out and just say, yeah, he got the dumb one out of the way at least for a few weeks, and this is going to be the one that makes them mad that they lost the last one, right? Maybe.
Yeah, very similar to one of our this podcast's favorite Mac coaches who coaches over at Toledo. Get the bad one out of the way.
Yep. Yeah. All right. Fair enough. I don't know where to go on this. I'm struggling for data points. I guess just if I just kind of didn't have my glasses on and I'm just looking at the screen, but the first thing that sticks out to me is I've got one team that has all 3 digits on the descriptives, and I have one team that has all 2 digits on the descriptives here, which is just very different tales. And I put my glasses on, and it's like, okay, Air Force actually has their offense together to some degree. Air Force's defense, I guess, is struggling to tie their shoes and find the field. My gosh, a defensive apex at 244 is kind of basically making everybody look like Jaden Maiava in USC. It's a good job there, Air Force. But Hawaii, the offense, I think we can just say officially now is just a failure to launch. I've wanted it to work. This team, weirdly, is defensively driven with former Trojan Dennis Thurman, who was not a very good defensive backs coach way back when, but has turned himself to a good DC there on the islands. If I'm just going to kind of use my bias here, my first inkling, if I would just look at this, I would think, Air Force at home, this line looks about right. And then my model says, hey, guess what? Hawaii is going to win this one by the very common football score, as I love to say, of 29-25. Robert's model kind of strikes me as more reasonable here. It's 36-10, or 36-20. I think this game just gets I don't know. Duck, you're the one it took me 54 years, and I still didn't realize until you pointed out to me Hawaii is just a different team on the mainland versus on the island. I guess maybe just throw it to you, and starting by this, does Hawaii's defense travel?
The defense is very solid. They have been very stout against the pass. They've held in there against the run. They've played very weak offenses in Stanford, Sam Houston State, and Portland State, and they really needed to mount a comeback against Fresno in order to have a chance to win that game. It was a very low-scoring game if you didn't see it. It was just a slow-burning grinder. Both offenses operated at a very slow pace. But for me, this play is all about Hawaii's offense. Even with the return of Micah Alejado at quarterback, he's still hurt. He was limping significantly in the second half against Fresno State. and this is the 6th straight week for Hawaii playing before the bye week. This is absolutely a spot that I had circled in the summer as a complete fade for Hawaii. You have road Hawaii, which is a different team than on the mainland. You've got the offense, even with Alejado returning, had their worst offensive output of the season this year at home. 4.16 yards per play. Alejado threw 47 passes, only 219 passing yards, 3 interceptions. We're 5 games in now, and Hawaii is just averaging 96 rushing yards per game and 3.3 yards per carry, and they have not rushed for a touchdown this season. I have zero confidence. I think we know Hawaii's defense is vastly underrated. They're a really solid bunch, but I don't have confidence in them to defend this Air Force triple option scheme. Yeah. I don't think that they have the cues. They haven't had a lot of consistency in defending it in the past. Air Force, number 1 nationally in what would be deemed rush play success rate. So you run a rushing play, is it deemed to be successful or not successful? Air Force is first nationally there. Hawaii is 94th in preventing rush success. So they're going to get run over here. I don't think Alejado is healthy. I think that the offense, if you just put on the film, it just looks so jerky for Hawaii. They don't connect on the deep shots. Everything is dink and dunk. They can't run the football. They can't convert situationally. The red zone for Hawaii, I'll say this, red zone has been just absolutely terrible for the Rainbow Warriors. Less than half of their red zone trips have ended in touchdowns. They've settled for 7 field goals in the red zone already. It's a bad matchup, a bad scheduling spot. One of my favorite plays of the week is laying it with Air Force. Oh. No question.
Let me go back. You did the Mountain West preview with us, right? I think you did, right?
I did the Big 12. I think we did the Mountain West.
I think we did. Or no, I think you missed that. I think it was just Robert and me. Yeah. We had a scheduling issue there. I brought that up because when we did that preview, the one thing that stood out to me was Alejado had great numbers against horrible defenses. And I don't know, this is like the epitome of horrible defense, a defensive apex at 244. Does that concern you at all, or are you just thinking like his health just, even if he's a better version of him, even if he's not as bad as we've seen, just the health basically is just going to make him just ineffective, and that just overrules everything here?
They played at Utah State in week 2. They dominated their FCS team, and then they played at Utah State in week 2. It was 10-14 at half, and then back and forth in the second half for a while. And they were right in there with Boise. They had within shouting distance against Boise State. They just couldn't get off the field, and they were trying to plug the run holes, and Boise State broke a few long passes. I don't know if the defense, they're playing an offense now that's a little more their speed. I think they'll lock it down here. I do. I think they'll lock it down a little bit better this week against the Hawaii. Hawaii has no explosivity in the pass game. Everything is short, dink and dunk. You think of the old run-and-shoot teams, right? The June Jones teams, the Colt Brennan or Cole McDonald or Bryant Moniz, all those Hawaii teams, they would take their shots, and they had some quick strike passing ability. Hawaii has absolutely zero of that. They do not connect on the deep shots, and they hardly even take them.
Gotcha. So you just think this is like a minimal exposure for the weak spot of Air Force?
I feel that way. Yeah. Playing at elevation, could be a little wind. Hawaii's in trouble here.
Okay. Robert, you have Air Force by 16, fresh off a 11-point loss to Boise at home. I guess Air Force is like a back-to-back home game. That's got to help too. Are you feeling confident enough to bet this? I mean, my gosh, you've got a 12-point margin here.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident in it. I think I will bet this. But the thing is that after looking at the results from last week, so it's either one or two things. So maybe ever since losing to USF, Boise has done pretty well. Now, USF has done okay. They obviously beat Florida, but then they got crushed by Miami. But so did Florida, too. So, bit of a mixed bag there. Maybe Boise is better than we thought, but also true at the same time, maybe the rest of the Mountain West is worse than we thought, too. I think both those things can be true at the same time. I think we could be looking at a scenario where it's, maybe Boise is still the best team in the Mountain West. Maybe. It's not completely decided yet. But at the same time, if the rest of the Mountain West is just bad, with the exception of Boise, then yeah, Air Force here, there's a lot of value in it. There'd be quite a bit of value in Air Force here, especially against Hawaii. Hawaii beat Stanford, which is not saying much. They got crushed by Arizona. They barely beat Portland State, and then they lost to Fresno, although it was close, but they did lose to Fresno. So, yeah, I want to fade this Hawaii team. I really do. I don't think this Hawaii team is as good as... We had high hopes for this Hawaii team. We've always wanted a good Hawaii team, but maybe it's just not to be.
The other thing, too, going back to my point about I've got a bunch of double digits here, like mid-double digits under the Hawaii column, and Air Force is all triple digits. I kind of look at that, and I think this almost seems like one of the I call it the barbell. What did you call it when you did your
the binomial?
Yeah. Does this not strike you as that, or are you just seeing like Hawaii's just so overall weak that a little asymmetry between the mountains, if you will?
Actually, no, I do see that, right? I can see the scenario of mine, right, where Air Force wins by 2 scores, right, and then the -4.5 is never really in doubt. But I could see a more competitive game where Hawaii is able to fully take advantage of Air Force's defense. But the problem is their offense is just so weak. And yes, I guess technically when you throw the numbers in there, yeah, you get to a number, like when you take Hawaii's apex and you take Air Force's comically large defensive apex together, and you get a number from that's fine. But the question is that actually what the number will be? Or is it actually Air Force will just be able to play? That's the problem. And that cuts both ways, too. But when you have one number that's comically small and one number that's comically large, you would end somewhere in the middle, which makes Hawaii seem like an average team. But at the same point in time, that's not going to happen. They're either going to be really good, they're either going to have the best offensive game they've had all year, or this is going to go really badly. Right?
Yeah.
Look at the other thing I'll say too is they've played 5 games. 4 of them have been at home. They've played against Stanford, Sam Houston, and Portland State in recent weeks, and the offensive output even there was less than desired. I don't know. Road Hawaii, I don't want any part of. To be honest with you, with Utah State coming down the pipe, Colorado State and San Jose on the road, UNLV on the road, Hawaii, I'm looking to fade the rest of the way. I don't think they're any good. Timmy Chang has not developed the run and shoot the way that we thought he was going to. It's just been so jerky his entire tenure. I look to fade these guys the rest of the way. I think that I took a win total under 6.5. I think they barely make a bowl game.
Yeah, Dennis Thurman, maybe next head coach of Hawaii. All right. I relish this game because for a few weeks, so for the people doing dishes or walking the dog out there, it's Tennessee giving 7.5 at Mississippi State. This line's come down, I think, a decent amount, at least notably. For the last few weeks, Mississippi State has been on my top pass defenses. Now, that might be a function of quality of opponent. Maybe not, depending on what we saw last week or Saturday in Madison. The fact that I'll put it this way: if I kind of piece the data points together, Mississippi State defense has been on my grid as exceptional, literally exceptional. When I get my first, BuckMetrics model numbers out, they have a really, really good defense here with a defensive rating of 8.6. What confirms it too is just the line towards it, because I think this opened up at like Tennessee minus 8.5 or 9. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
Duck probably had the one like in June at like, I don't know, 14.
No, I didn't bet this one, but some of them.
But but you had the line in mind. It was but it's moved just like since it was dropped on Sunday, or opened on Sunday. Mississippi State just seems like a sharp play, and Tennessee literally they probably gained as much as you can in that loss to Georgia. Now, I don't know if I'm following my model here. 9 seems super, super optimistic for Mississippi State, but they do have Blake Shapen back too, and the offense has been pretty good with him. 123 apex. I don't know if 9 points is really realistic here. Robert, I'll go to you first, but how confident are you in a 20-point Tennessee win, as your model says?
I don't know about 20 points. I think they can cover the minus 7.5. I think Tennessee is better than we thought this year, but I also think that Georgia is just worse than we thought as well. I think a lot of people were really bearish on Tennessee with Joey Aguilar, and I think he has been not bad at all. I think a lot of people are going to look at the Georgia game and say, "Oh wow, Tennessee's a lot better than we thought they were going to be." I was never like, "Oh, Tennessee is dead." I always thought they were going to be like, okay, maybe like a fringe CFP team, maybe like an eight or 9 win season. But they're like, I think people thought like Tennessee was going to go like 6-6 or something like that, and now they're like, "Oh, okay, they're better than that." But at the same point in time, I think Georgia is just worse than we thought. The interesting thing about this game is that, and I'm not sure if we have this later in the slides or not, but Friday night, Arizona State, or TCU at Arizona State. If TCU wins that game, bet Tennessee. If Arizona State wins that game pretty comfortably, bet Mississippi State. I think that's the best, because that, I think, is the true data point here. Because the thing is, Mississippi State got to an early lead against Arizona State. Arizona State came back, and then it was a bit of a fluky thing that Mississippi State even got that win. They needed a late, deep pass to be able to get a touchdown to win that game. But at the same point in time is the fact that if Arizona State loses to TCU, then I would immediately jump on Tennessee here. I just immediately throw up something on Tennessee. So that's my take on this. I think Tennessee is better than – I think both these teams are better than we thought. But outside of that Arizona State game, we haven't really seen Mississippi State looking amazing yet. We've seen this back when there was the SEC West. We've seen teams rebuild, but in the SEC, it's usually a bit slow. It's usually, okay, 1 year to be like, okay, then another year to actually be good, then another year to be like really. I think maybe they're between. They're better than last year, but I'd say they're probably in the okay to good stage right now. This is the okay to good year. Next year's year where they could be actually.
Yeah, I guess, and I got confused here. I thought Mississippi State played Maryland, but they have the common opponent with Maryland of Northern Illinois. But if I'm, there's kind of enough data points where it's almost hard to say. How did I say it? Like on Monday, I said like if you're trying to disprove the Mississippi State, at least the defense here, you're running out of real estate. The runway's almost gone here. Mm-hmm. You got to take the plane off, and I'm not seeing it yet. They held Southern Miss, to 17, which I think Southern Miss is as good as we had expected, or competent at least. Holding Arizona State to 20 points, I think, is aging well. I think, maybe that was Arizona State's low point. And holding Northern Illinois to 10, is Northern Illinois great? I don't know. They keep breaking my model. And I talked through it. Maybe it's just my model's picking up these weird data points. So I don't know. I've got a lot of conflict. I've got conflicting here where there's like a lot of kind of fairy dust, but a lot of data points that really points to a real player in Mississippi State. What do you think, Duck?
I think that we saw the blueprint for Mississippi State as a home dog to pull the shocker. They've already done it against Arizona State. And we are giving Tennessee this sort of credit for how they played at home against Georgia. Georgia had a path to creating problems for Tennessee, and that was to get pressure in the face of Joey Aguilar. We see all the advanced metrics that show when he faces pressure, the decision-making suffers, he throws errant passes, he makes just poor choices and is flippant with the football. And we have 2 years of data in the Sun Belt to back that up. Now we get road Joey Aguilar, and you get that environment in Stark Vegas with the cowbells going and the loud crowd and not being able to communicate well. And I just look at Mississippi State, very underrated and very improved defense, 27th nationally in defensive pass play success rate, and 40th, there's an EPA metric, which is like an expected points added, 40th in EPA per pass defensively, and you look at Mississippi State, and the amount of pressure that they can put on the opposition with their tackles for loss and their sacks registered and just the QB pressures that they put on their opponents. I would not want to have to line up against that defense on the road. And again, it's one of those situations where you've got Tennessee going on the road in league play for the very first time. Mm-hmm. And yeah, they've scored a ton of points this year, but you know who they've played? They played Syracuse, East Tennessee State, and UAB, and then they played a Georgia defense that's probably worse than maybe what we thought here. I see Tennessee on the ground, and they are okay on the ground, but they ran it against really porous defenses. I think they could struggle running the football here against the Bulldogs, who are allowing just, what are they allowing? 3.7 yards per carry on the ground this season. And you look at what I look at is Mississippi State now finally finding their rhythm on the ground. 574 rushing yards the last 2 weeks. Shapen's been pretty efficient throwing the ball. 67%, 7-2 touchdown to interception ratio, 8.8 yards per pass. And they are really a confident bunch here heading into the crux of their conference schedule. For me, it comes down to the red zone execution. Mississippi State, all 16 red zone trips have resulted in scores, 13 of them touchdowns. Tennessee allowing touchdowns on 77% of their red zone trips, and 12 of 13 trips overall have resulted in scores. You've got a team on the road that doesn't bow up in the red zone against a confident team that's undefeated, already having pulled an upset as a home dog. There's no reason they can't do it again. I'm not going to say that they're going to win this game on the field, but I'm getting 8.5 points. And you can't give those guys 8.5 points at home after they've already proven they can beat a top 25 team in Arizona State. Yeah, I'll take Mississippi State. Absolutely. Give me those points. I'll take the Bulldogs here, plus 7.5.
Let me ask you this. I guess here's the thing that really makes me hesitant. And we'll talk about the other side of this argument in a little bit later. This Mississippi State defense was horrible last year. Fine. I don't know where the improvement came from. We'll talk about another team later where I can say, aha, I got it. I have no idea where this came from. They were horrible on defense last year. They have a new DC. I'm not going to put you on the spot. I will just say, if you know anything about this new DC, I certainly do not. Do you have anything to offer on the kid? I have no idea. His name is, I was looking at my phone, like Hutzler or something. Anything on him?
I was going to pull it up and look at it here to see what I can dig up.
I mean, if you don't know, that's fine. I mean, that kind of goes to my hesitance. Again, if one of the three of us knows, then it's like, okay, I can see. It just... Do you think that they're legitimately this good? Like, if I just kind of say they are literally, their defense is 9 points better than the average FBS team, and they're literally in like the top 20, does that strike you as reasonable? I know that with limited data points, does that seem realistic?
I think, yeah, I mean, there's just so many things that go into it. The metrics show and the play on the field shows that they've improved. Now, I don't think they're a top 20 defense in the country, but I don't think you have to be to beat Joey Aguilar, who's going on the road here. I think at some point he's overperformed expectations, and I think at some point we'll start to see Tennessee really kind of reveal their colors. We saw it required against Georgia, the long, explosive bomb passes that they connected on, and they're not always going to connect on those passes. They're not always going to just be able to dial in the 60-yard passes where it's, oh, we need a shot in the arm here. Let's just throw it deep and see what happens. Sometimes that's not going to work, and generally it doesn't work on the road.
Yeah, especially with a bunch of freaking cowbells in your ear. As you said, I was going to ask you, and I think that you kind of have almost kind of made this concession, I don't know to what degree, that Mississippi State's the toughest defense that Tennessee's going to have faced to date. Let me ask you this. I want to go through again a couple of teams that Mississippi State has faced. Southern Miss and Arizona State. Have they faced two quarterbacks, literally the player of the year in the Sun Belt last year, and possibly last year's one of better players in all the Big 12 last year? Have they already played two quarterbacks better than Joey Aguilar?
I would say so.
Wow.
Or at least Braxton is such a scheme quarterback, and he fits a certain skill set. I don't know if he would tear up the SEC the way that he's been tearing up the Sun Belt, but certainly was able to put the cuffs on Sam Leavitt in Arizona State and really did well to bottle up that passing attack. And they have great receivers as well, just as talented a receivers as Tennessee has. I think there is a blueprint. I think that they know what the blueprint is. They know what they need to do. And just Tennessee might win this game, but to lay more than a touchdown on the road is just not something I'd be comfortable doing. And I don't know that long term you'd be in the black doing that in these situations where it's your first road trip in league play of the season. Yep,
agree. All right, interesting. This one, I don't know. This is kind of like the gambler's delight, kind of the hipster alternative to all the good games that we have, which we'll get to in just a moment too. But this is one of those fascinating ones where, especially that line that's shrinking, the shrink to stink area where it shrunk and now it's in kind of the stink line mode, so, or area, if you will. Okay, next one. Speaking of Southern Miss, this breaks my heart, Robert. I'm on. How do I say? I'm bearish Jacksonville State, and on the field, and now your model is just saying no, no, no. I'm still not convinced. You know, we've had just kind of a weird series of things here, and now my model's actually saying Southern Miss is clearly better, which would be no shock to me before the season, and now it's a little bit contrary to what I've seen on the field in terms of the margin of my model saying that Southern Miss is 19 points better. Like I said, you know, Southern Miss reigning Sunbelt Player of the Year, I believe, in Braylon Braxton. You know, good offense here, 145 Ryan in terms of explosivity. You know, Marshall wasn't a great defensive team last year. Southern Miss has played, I forget, I know obviously they played Mississippi State. Good run defense here. Jacksonville State, I'm not convinced on the defense. The thing that just in the passing game, 51. I believe this is our guy Cam Fancher who's there.
Gavin Wimsatt.
Oh, sorry. I confused my practice field legend with just the guy who just not at all. They're running the ball, and you know, let me just throw it to you, Duck, since you pay attention to this kind of stuff more than I do. Is Jacksonville State doing some kind of unorthodox kind of run game thing, or are they just actually like functional, or has it just been like a bunch of schedule opportunities?
Well, they played Central Florida in the opener in a game that was delayed by weather. There was a ton of rain. It was a sloppy field, and Central Florida is not very good anyway. And then they played Liberty, and Liberty had every opportunity to make adjustments defensively and pivot what they were doing in their alignment on the defensive front and force Gavin Wimsatt to make throws over the top. And of course, they didn't do any of that. They didn't change anything they were doing. And Jacksonville State won that game with Gavin Wimsatt having thrown for 52 yards and completing 6 passes. So it was very poor coaching. And we've seen that from Liberty now all season. They lost on the road against Bowling Green. They got destroyed last week by James Madison. They're 17.5-point underdogs against Old Dominion this week. It's just a very poorly coached team and a very bad, talented team overall is Liberty. And so that was one of their wins. And then they went on the road and lost to Georgia Southern. And then they defeated FCS Murray State, who's a really bad the worst Missouri Valley Football Conference team that there is. So this is a spot here that I had circled for Southern Miss as really a must win. Southern Miss has overperformed their preseason expectations. Regular season win total came out at 4.5. And they really hadn't caught on to all of the transient nature of the roster, the hire of Charles Huff, the bringing 30 players from the Thundering Herd who won the Sun Belt last season, and we start to see it all come together. It didn't look exceptional against Mississippi State, although that loss has aged well, and then it did look good the next couple of weeks, including a home defeat of Appalachian State in league play. Last week, it would seem that they took a step back with a 20-30 loss against Louisiana Tech on the road. There were 3 plays in that game that, if they would have gone the other way, would have completely changed the outcome of that game. Southern Miss gave up a 75-yard touchdown play on the second play of the game, and then they had a 4th and goal on the 1-yard line. They had 4 chances from the 1-yard line, and on 4th and goal from the 1, couldn't punch it in. And then they threw an interception that was returned for a touchdown. If just 2 of those 3 plays are changed, Southern Miss wins the game, and they're 3-1. They're a much more talented football team, top to bottom. The composite talent rankings on the roster, they're better. They're better coached. I think that they blast Jacksonville State here. I think Jacksonville State is getting so much respect because they beat Liberty, and I just don't understand it. I still don't think this team's very good. If you can defend the run and stack 8 in the box and force Gavin Wimsatt to throw the ball, which he cannot do effectively, you will beat Jacksonville State. So I really hope we see that play out here because Southern Miss is the better team.
Yeah, one more, and this is kind of a deep cut on this, but I will say, I'm even going to say that I'm not even, aside from the we hope aberrational plays that you mentioned against Louisiana Tech, I'm not going to consider that a bad loss. I actually have my metrics have Louisiana Tech as the top-rated team in Conference USA. It's not like they did that against who we bet UTEP, who we know,
and they outgained Louisiana Tech by 175 yards in the loss.
Yeah, it's it's not a bad team. I mean, they scored 20. How many did LSU have against Louisiana Tech? 27?
23.
Okay.
23.
So they almost have Gavin Nussmeier at quarterback. Robert, I'm not going to ask you to show your work. I'll just say, like, how confident are you of a Jacksonville State win here? Or are you just going to disclaim your model on this one?
I will say I don't hate Southern. I'm not touching this one. Southern Miss I mean, they're overperforming expectations of the 4.5. I'm very happy I have that. But, like, then they, like, okay, lost to Mississippi State, which looks better by the day. Crushed App State, that's good. But then they did lose to Louisiana Tech. And then they're just going to continue playing Conference USA teams for some reason. But this is the thing. I like this team. I want to like this team. I have preseason futures for this team. And so far they're 1-0 in conference play, which is good. Jacksonville State is not that bad. WinSat has been okay. I think my model really likes UCF. So I think that's why they're getting a lot of respect for keeping it close in that game. Even though technically had it actually been Tavy and Jackson, that probably would have been closer to a blowout. So, because he was only in there for the back half of the game, even then he still overperformed the first starting quarterback. No, I'm not touching this. I could be wrong on this one. The model could be wrong on this one. It seems like it depends on the day whether or not this team Mississippi State is going to be really good or not. So I was disappointed in the Southern Miss loss, or in the LA Tech loss by Southern Miss. I don't know. I'm not going to touch this, but my model will probably correct just Southern Miss. It's getting a bit confused by them because it's okay. You've got like Jacksonville State and Southern Miss have losses, relatively close losses to good teams, and then you have other stuff too. So it's a bit confusing for the model, I'd say.
I think I might make a small play on Southern Miss. I also had to write down September 24th. Robert says Gavin Wimsatt has been okay. Just make a note of that.
Okay. It hasn't been the worst. Actually, no, that's right. That's right. I said after I beat Liberty, I said Gavin Wimsatt, who was also there. I remember saying
yes.
he threw the ball like 12 times. So I'm like, he was also there.
You also pointed out that Gavin Wimsatt crucially fails the test of "do not be Gavin Wimsatt."
Yes.
Yeah. All right, now on to the games that everybody is talking about. The big one, the whiteout. We haven't had a legitimate whiteout in a game this big for years. Thank you very much, Fox. Oregon at Penn State. This one seems stuck at 3.5 unless it's moved in the last couple of hours here. Really interesting matchup, obviously, just beyond just the headlines and the laughable fact that if Penn State wins, it will not be over top 5 team, which is totally unfair. But don't know if we have to worry about that. We've got a difference in quarterback play here. This is going to be, I think, as they might say in the car business, your mileage may vary on this one. I don't know if Drew Aller's been playing possum or he turned into an actual possum. He had better numbers last year. And it's not like I think in theory they upgraded in the wide receiver room. I don't know if we've seen it yet. I don't know if they've just been, playing trying out the dumb plays before the real plays they've been saving for this one. Dante Moore with a really nice apex of 173 in the top 5, if I remember. Best pass defense that he's faced. I would want to say snarkily Montana State, but that doesn't include FCS play. So it gets pretty grim in terms of the defenses that he's faced. We'll get back to that in a second. Oregon running the ball down people's throats. Oregon more explosive in the passing game, as I just said. Oregon is shown themselves to be dominant at shutting down really horrible passing offenses, unless you really like what you saw from the late Mike Gundy's passing team against Tulsa at home. Just from a metric standpoint, the predictives here, these teams just look even. I've got this a 1-point game. Robert's model has this a 7-point Oregon win. I can't argue with, I kind of thought that the model was going to spit out something more like, my model's going to spit out something more like Robert's. I want to go back to here. There's such a big advantage nominally in Apex. Robert, I will take you back to 2 years ago and throw it to you on this. You might remember through the 2023 season, Dante Moore started as we were tracking, the top 10 quarterbacks. He was in the top 10. And then he faced an FBS team and he just went off a cliff. And he lost his job to the nondescript Ethan Garber soon thereafter. I think he's been much better. I think you're putting a lot of eggs in baskets of Northwestern, Oklahoma State if you think it's cured. this is the one that will convince me, especially if it is in a whiteout situation. What is your confidence that he can do that?
Yeah, I think the Northwestern one, you talk about the first road conference game, got that test out of the way. Didn't cover the spread in that one. I didn't touch that spread though, but that was the most backdoor cover, probably possibly one of the most backdoor covers of all time. And I think at a certain point they don't care. They wanted to crush Oklahoma State. They didn't care to cover 28.5-point spread. That's fine. So road test out of the way, and also Dante Moore has played on the road before. Obviously, I don't think it's the same Dante Moore, and even just watching the games, it is not the same Dante Moore we saw at UCLA several years ago. It's not. And the thing is, if it was just Dante Moore, that was like a quarterback that they had rehabilitated, I'd be like, oh, okay, sure, I'm worried about it. But this is now quarterback number 3 that they've rehabilitated. That Lanning specifically has rehabilitated Oregon. Dylan Gabriel never went back till he was always better than Oklahoma Dylan Gabriel, and Bo Nix mostly always better than Auburn Bo Nix. I think the first season a little shakier, but second season became an NFL top first round draft pick, right? So if it was the first time they've rehabilitated a quarterback, I'd agree with you, but I have a bit more confidence on it this time. Apparently the public is on Penn State here, which is weird because I didn't think they would be. I thought for sure that the public would be on Oregon here. Like, now the line I think has moved down to a 3, I think, but I see some 3.5s in some books. I saw 3 in some books. Again, this is going to be one of the most important games of the weekend. I'm 1,000% watching this game for obvious reasons. But even just, like, I'm an Oregon fan, but obviously this is, even if I wasn't an Oregon fan, I would want to watch this game 100%, right? This is going to be an amazing game. 7 o'clock window. Now, the problem is, though, of course, you've got Bama and Georgia on the other end, but again, you've got the Big Ten and the SEC and 2 marquee matchups. Who's going to win that matchup? I kind of love to see who gets the most eyeballs. But no, Oregon, this is going to be a great game. The thing is, my kind of just take on it is the fact that we saw this game. Actually, we saw this game with the exact flip line in the Big Ten championship game just under a year ago. The line was Oregon minus 3.5 or 3, depending on the time. And they crushed it. I think they won by, 14 or something? It was a not particularly close game.
It was always between 14 and 7. It was just like, are they going to win by 1 or 2 touchdowns here, basically?
It was just back and forth punches. And the thing is, are these teams really that different than that time? I feel like for this game specifically, I feel like this line was written in August and just hasn't moved. If that makes sense? Mm-hmm. Like, I feel like if you were saying, okay, we think Dante Moore is going to be a downgrade over Dylan Gabriel, and you did that in the offseason, and you just never updated it, that's what it would be. But, like, Drew Aller has not been nearly as strong as people would have thought, and Dante Moore has been better, if not better, than Dylan Gabriel for some of these games here. Like, this has been an amazing pass attack. The Oregon didn't even have that much last year. They didn't have it that much last year. So they were good. Don't get me wrong; they were still a good team, but there was no deep threat. It was always like, okay, we're gonna throw a 15-yard out or a 10-yard out. How many highlight reels have we seen Dante Moore throwing 40-yard bombs? That's the thing. So I think they actually have stuff that they have more tools this year than they actually had last year. So I don't know. I'd have to ask Duck on. I'd love Duck's opinion on that as well. But I feel like this line is just wrong. I feel like this line was written in August and they just never updated it. In fact, that's my feeling on it.
I can see that too. Let me just going to give you 2, and these are not minor things, 2 differences between the Big Ten conference game and this game. The difference between a neutral site nominally and a whiteout, I think, is huge. And unless you really like what you saw at Clemson last Saturday, I think that Jim Knowles is a bit of an upgrade over Tom Allen as well as defensive coordinator. I'll put it this way. I kind of like to use like the first or like comparisons. This is probably the toughest defensive coordinator that Dante Moore has faced in his life by a wide margin too, which makes it interesting. That's as I talk about, that's the matchup that's most interesting to me.
And actually, I'll actually throw another point on that too. Jim Knowles was able to basically completely shut down Oregon in the Rose Bowl last year. That's important to note as well too.
Yeah. All right, so Duck, let me just start us on this one with this. Has Drew Aller actually turned into a possum, or is he playing possum?
It's so hard to say. These are 18 to 22-year-old kids, and to try to get these guys up for Nevada, FIU, and Villanova, this is going to be just such a different type of game and a different type of feel this week. I mean, I'll just speak in hyperbole here. I'll go as far as to say that we don't know anything about either one of these teams when it comes to this specific situation
Yeah.
because playing Montana State, Oklahoma State, Oregon State, it's just nowhere close to the competition. And we just rattled off Penn State's opponents. I don't think we have any data points that we can draw any tangible information of when you're playing bottom 100 level teams compared to a top 5 matchup. I will say this is absolutely such a spot for Penn State. You're off the bye. You're on revenge for the Big Ten championship game. And if you don't think that matters, I assure you that James Franklin and all those players for Penn State remember exactly how that Big Ten championship game went. It matters. So you're off the bye. You're at home. It's a night game at Happy Valley, the whiteout. Big game James, 0-3 against the number this season. I say that because he knows the number and he tries to cover the number, and they're pissed about it. He's upset about some of the goofy stuff that's happened in late game situations, which has cost Penn State some covers. I'll just say, this is hyperbole, let's say, but if you can't do it here, big game James, when can you? And if you look at the Penn State tenure for James Franklin in totality, I would consider this a must win for his tenure at Penn State. It's just such a spot. You have to do it here. The revenge, the bye week, the hosting the across country travel, the night game with the whiteout. This is absolutely the spot that Penn State has to have been licking their chops for all summer. Who cares what happened in the first 3 games? They won each game by 5 touchdowns. This is the spot. I could only play Penn State.
Wow. You're not concerned. I mean, I'm just curious. They got the receiver from Troy. They got Trevor Pena. They got a nice receiver from USC who should, I would want to see more just to kind of make sure that we air out the engine and we make sure how fast the car really goes. And I haven't seen that. So either they're really confident. I understand you're saying, look, there's only so much you can read into it, but God, wouldn't you want to kind of just like show from the first half of one of these games, like look what we can do, understand what we can do? You're just not concerned about that?
I think the play has been below people's expectations, but at the end of the day, I think that the matchup to watch is Penn State's defense, and I think Penn State could potentially have the best defense in the country. Mm-hmm. And Oregon has faced nothing close to what they're going to line up and see on Saturday. So how do you communicate? How do you face adversity with 108,000 people screaming at you? How do you pivot and make these on-the-fly adjustments when you're not in Eugene and you're not up by 3 touchdowns in the first quarter against Oklahoma State? I think it's just going to be so tricky. It's going to be so hard for the Ducks to operate. And so, truly, I would lean under in the game. I would lean under 52.5, which is a key number in totals. But I just can see this being such a tricky spot. I'm not going to say that Penn State's going to blow them out. I don't think that at all. But this is just going to be so tricky to have to do it in this environment. It's going to be wild on Saturday night. Must-see TV.
Yeah, exactly. It's on NBC, too, and I think they tend to do an okay job of like getting like the pregame stuff. Oh no, does that mean Colt McCoy's doing this one? I hope not.
I hope it's either him, but probably him and Ian Eagles' son.
Noah Eagles is fine. It's just Colt McCoy. Haven't caught him this year. I hope he's improved a lot. I'll just say that if he's doing the game. So, all right, yeah, absolutely must watch. In the same window, Alabama at Georgia. This one seems stuck at 3 as well. I think this depends. What's weird is this game is very much in the eye of the beholder, and yet this line seems stuck at 3. A home team by 3. It's like an NFL game. I think I've got it. I don't know. Like Ty Simpson's a top 5 quarterback by my metrics. I don't know how to account for that Florida State game. He didn't have great numbers. I think he got his feet set maybe twice all game. Alabama has really, really shown well against really poor opposition since then. Georgia, I think, wow, look, I didn't even notice this. Look at this defensive apex for Georgia, 134. Now, there is some Tennessee in there, but my gosh, you got to kind of normalize that, my guys. That is no bueno. These numbers right here, this is what just really struck me as much as anything. This is mediocre. The power ratings, offensive and defensive power ratings for Georgia, no bueno. I think these power ratings might be a little juiced for Alabama, just like getting every little bit against the inferior opponents they've faced since Florida State. No offense to my beloved Warhawks of ULM. I don't know if my model 37-20 is fair, but I think it's going to be. I think we're looking at an Alabama win on the road that's somewhere between the 3 points that Robert's model shows and the 17 that I'm showing. I think in Alabama wins by probably a touchdown plus here. And again, this is all I think, but man, I'll just throw it to you to start with this on Georgia. Is Georgia kind of as mediocre as the metrics say, Duck?
It appears that way. They tipped their hand against Tennessee, that they were unable to get pressure, they were unable to get home. I still don't make as much about the laissez-faire performances against Marshall and Austin Peay, because we know that nobody cares less about the final score in these blowout games than Kirby Smart. He just uses those games as coachable, teachable moments to get his team improved. I actually lean over the posted total. I think it's still 52.5, maybe not, but I would lean over the total, as I can just see no pressure being put on Alabama's quarterback. They have a propensity to get into these games where they abandon the run completely in the second half and it becomes a high-flying affair. I look at the red zone offense. Alabama, 14 out of 15 trips, they've scored 12 touchdowns. And Georgia, 13 out of 14 trips in the red zone, they've scored, and 11 of those have been touchdowns. Both of these offensive lines have actually performed pretty well this season, and they protect the quarterback better than what maybe better than just an average SEC team. They're both really solid offensive lines. I just don't see that we'll see a ton of pass rush either way here. When you look at Georgia, their coverage grades per PFF, which is an advanced metrics website, per PFF, their coverage grades are actually very poor. So I can see the Alabama receivers getting some separation here and gaining some chunk plays through the air. Again, both the run defenses should be okay here. They're actually, both run defenses are pretty good. So again, I can see this second half being one where both of these coaching staffs abandon the run. We see a ton of passing. It's back and forth, similar to how last year's game played out, which was very high scoring. It was a ton of points at the very end, a lot of passing. And I just think we see both teams in the high 20s here. So I would say over 52.
Okay.
And I guess if I had to answer your question on who's going to win or who's going to cover, I don't love fading Georgia at home, but there is a possibility that maybe they're just weaker than expected.
I can't disagree. That's All right, Robert. Are you going to go? I guess first thing, are you going to go against your own model and say, maybe Georgia should be the favorite here?
No, I'm not going to do that. Actually, what I will say is that I noticed this as we were talking. Technically, because I'm seeing a couple 52.5s, technically this should be a dual model over. Because we've got 59. I got 59.
Yeah, it's not by 7. It's not by 7 points yet.
Oh, okay. No, but I'm seeing 52.5s. Oh, okay, it was 6.5 then. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I got 57. So if it drops to 50.
Yeah, I'm not gonna bet it, but I still think that's like a border. That's like the definition of like borderline. So yeah, I like that play from Duck there. What I will say is this, and I said this during our review when we talked about Tennessee, Georgia. I initially was on Georgia in that game, Georgia minus 3.5. Loved that play. Was watching that game, saw Tennessee go up 21-7, and then right before the second quarter, I went out live bet it. I got Georgia, I think, plus 10.5 or 8.5, somewhere around there, because there's dead points in there. I did that in money line, and I just walked off. And then, sure enough, Georgia came all the way back. They scored basically immediately right after the break. They tied. They basically tied. They got a field goal, so they were down within 4. They took the lead early in the third, and I was like, all right, that's it. I think they even got up by 7 at one point. I'm like, so they're covering my initial spread, obviously covering the plus spread I bet and the money line I bet. And I'm like, all right, there you go. Game's over. Tale as old as time. We've seen this dozens of times before. Favorite team gets behind early game, they come back, they clamp down. We've seen Georgia specifically do this. It's time for Georgia to just put the clamps down, completely shut down the Tennessee offense, and end the game. They're going to force interceptions. They're going to be fumbles. All this stuff. They're just going to shut. They're going to shut Tennessee down, and that's going to be the ball game. And that did not happen at all. Tennessee kept scoring, and then Georgia had to keep scoring, and then Tennessee had to keep scoring, and then eventually we get to overtime. I am very concerned about that. Now, we had talked about Tennessee. We talked about Tennessee earlier. We're like, maybe Tennessee isn't as good as expected. And again, I think the Tennessee-Ole Miss game, I think, is early in the afternoon, right? That's a 3 o'clock game, I believe. If Tennessee loses to Mississippi State, just immediately bet Alabama, right? That's the thing, right? Like, I don't think Tennessee is that great. I think Tennessee was, like, okay, not great. And the fact that Georgia, supposedly one of the co-favorites of the SEC, struggled to beat an okay, not great Tennessee team, that should be very concerning. And especially the defense. You know what? I had bet the over in that. I think I said that there was a sneaky over play in that game. And actually, I didn't bet the over, but I bet Gunnar Stockton over 1.5 passing touchdowns. That cashed pretty easily because I thought, okay, Georgia's going to be able to score at will against Tennessee's defense. And that was mostly true. But I figured at a certain point, Tennessee was just going to shut it down. They're like, all right, that's it. We finally figured out how to beat Joey Aguilar. That's it. Done. Game over. And that never happened. That never happened. And that is, if you are and the thing is, that could be worse because Tennessee actually was going down the field. They actually had a chance to win the game in regulation with a last-second field goal. So they couldn't even stop them from driving down the field at the end of regulation. So I'm very concerned about Georgia's defense. Bama's offense has looked really good since Florida State, and I think Florida State is also pretty good in this too because Florida State might be also pretty good. So I think, honestly, I'm very much willing to take. Actually, I'm just realizing now. I think now I know why this is probably only a 3 because my model is still behind on Florida State because it's using last year's data. So it's saying, "Oh, Bama, you lost to that really horrible Florida State team," even though Florida State's actually so. That might be. This might actually be technically like a dual model. I'm almost not exactly a dual model play, but almost a dual model play. No, I'm taking Bama. I think I grab Bama 3.5. I'm going to grab some over here, maybe some Ty Simpson over passing touchdowns as well, because I thought Gunnar Stockton was going to be able to pass against Tennessee. I didn't think Joey Aguilar was going to pass against Georgia because we've seen so many times good quarterback going against Georgia gets absolutely crushed. We see like how many times we didn't see that with Tennessee. How many times does Tennessee come into the game saying, "Oh, we're against Georgia," being like, "Oh, we're so good this year," and then we see like they score 14 points with 2 interceptions, right? We've seen that so many times, and that didn't happen this year. And the fact that it didn't happen, and especially in a year that generally people consider to be down for Tennessee, that's very concerning if you're thinking of betting on Georgia here. So that's my piece. I'm on Alabama, and we'll see what happens on Saturday.
Yeah, do both of you guys think that Alabama's offensive line was so bad against Florida State? Do you think that kind of flares up again here on the road against Georgia? I think if Georgia's defensive line just typically is just so good, is that an exposure here?
They weren't good on the road against Tennessee, so it's just hard to expect that they're going to turn it on and generate the pass rush.
Exactly.
We'll see. Maybe.
Exactly, right? That's the thing. If you couldn't do it against Tennessee, all right, can you really do that against Bama?
I don't know. That's why I'm asking. I don't know. I think I just talked myself out of playing Alabama here, though.
The thing is, I would say that I was about to say Boston College win because it's Thomas Castellanos, but no, the Florida State win against Bama. That I think I attribute that mostly to Florida State's offense. I think honestly, that was them just running the ball down their throat, eating up the clock, and then Bama would get the ball back, and they try to do something, and they just couldn't do it. They go 3-and-out or something like that. To me, it wasn't like an absolutely smothering on defense. It was just the fact that Florida State gets the ball, they chew up a ton of clock and score a touchdown. Then Bama gets the ball back there under pressure, they try to do something they can't. Then they run the same thing again. That's what I think that game was. So I think, and again, Bama won this game last year too. Now, it was at Bama, and I remember that was a very high-scoring game last year. So I like Bama here. I like it, and I like Bama to maybe exploit this maybe not-so-great Georgia defense.
You make a good point, too. That is forgivable. With the 2 new coordinators, that can go one of 2 ways. It's like the players don't get it, or the players kind of get it, and then the opposing coach has no idea what's going on, especially like a Gus and Castellanos combination. I don't know how you prepare for that without having seen it before, right? That seems a little difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. As if those two weren't... Sorry, Duck, was there one other thing you had to say? Nope.
Nope.
Okay.
No, sir. No.
We're not even done with like the headline games here. My gosh. Boy, talk about a line that's moved too. Did this open at 13.5 Ohio State at Washington?
Yeah.
I think this is now at 7.5 if I read Twitter correctly. I made my case for Washington extensively in the preview, the Big Ten preview, and they've proven me proud so far. Damon Williams has been everything that I was hoping for. They're running the ball well, explosive, more explosive than Ohio State on offense. Now, Ohio State has played the best defense in the country by my numbers, Texas, whereas Washington has not. Exceptional run defense here by Washington as well. The Ryan Walters thing seems to be working out quite nicely. Thank you very much. It also helps to be playing teams like Washington State. Thank you very much. I've got this basically almost a draw with a nod a bit to Ohio State on the defense here. When you normalize these numbers for the venue in which they were earned and then the venue in which this game is played, I actually have Washington by a couple. Robert's got Ohio State by a touchdown here. I don't think I'm going to play this Washington money line, but my gosh, this has been, let me just throw it to you on this, Duck. How sharp is the sharp money when when the number one team moves from a 13.5 point favorite to a 7.5 point favorite at a team who received precisely 0 AP votes? A lot of public money moving that, right?
No, and I don't think we've seen any public money yet. That'll come in on Friday afternoon or Saturday morning. But again, this is just a tremendous opportunity for the Huskies to host Ohio State. We've got Julian Sayan's first road trip as a freshman quarterback on the road. Washington plays in what has been deemed the second loudest stadium in FBS. That stadium is just crazy how it traps the noise in there. We looked at Texas. We saw Texas pinned down significantly against Ohio State's defense, and we were ready to just chalk it up to Ohio State having reloaded on defense and effectively replacing all of the players that they had lost from last year's national championship defense. And now we've discovered that Texas offensively is just significantly broken. So there's a chance now that Ohio State's defense has been baselined as the best. Maybe they're not, because they also played a MAC team in Grambling State. Let's just call it what it is. I don't believe Washington's offense is broken. In fact, I'll say this on the record. Washington will have the better quarterback on the field in Damon Williams. He's electric. He's a great passer, 74%, 6 touchdowns, hasn't thrown a pick. He can run the ball well and effectively. Washington runs well on the ground. The offensive line has played exceptional football. Huskies are just fifth nationally in offensive havoc allowed. They don't allow pressures. They don't give up negative plays. They don't give up sacks. And Ohio State, 107th nationally in defensive havoc, just 17 tackles for loss and 7 sacks. And the majority of that was against Grambling. So we've got an efficient run offense, a good offensive line, playing against a tad overrated defensive front seven.
Yep.
And the other thing about Washington, they are unbelievably efficient in situational football. They're converting 75% of their third downs, and 15 out of 16 red zone trips have ended in touchdowns.
Jesus.
I think Washington's defense will also provide some resistance here. We haven't seen Ohio State really light the fireworks offensively. Ohio State's just 114th nationally in offensive explosiveness and 122nd in pass play explosiveness. They played Ohio's defense and Grambling, mind you. It's surprising with all that receiver talent that they have not been able to just light it up yet. The Buckeyes have gone through long stretches where they couldn't run the ball. They did it against Texas. And I'll be interested to see if they're unable to really rely on the ground game there. How are they going to get the chunk plays? How are they going to get out of the hole if they're in third medium? I just don't know that they're going to be able to throw their way out of it on the road with a quarterback who just has not had a lot of time in the seat. The clincher for me, Ohio State was 3 for 12 on third down against Texas with just 1 red zone trip. I am led to believe we'll see an offensive output that mimics that, as opposed to the 75 points they scored against Grambling or whatever they did against Ohio. I think this environment is a major test. I absolutely have a bet already in pocket with Washington. I think Washington will win this game on the field. Not that they could. I think they will upset Ohio State on Saturday.
This reminds me so much of one of my first exposures to the difficulty of the first conference road game. 1990 USC reigning Rose Bowl champions. Just a famous quote from Todd Marinovich. Don't know if you remember that name. This was like the best defensive player. Yep, the best defensive player I've ever seen. I just have to say Steve Entman. Don't know if you know that name. He was just unblockable. USC was triple teaming him, and he was getting past. He was just getting to the quarterback. Marinovich had a quote after the game. He just said it was just perfect. He said, "All I saw was purple," and this venue's overlooked somehow. I agree with you 1,000 to 100%. Robert, you seem to dabble in this market more than Duck, so I'll ask you this. This market is wide open. Excuse me, got an itch there. Meaning the Heisman Trophy market. We've seen it's been a revolving door, and now the most current leader, is no longer the leader because he's out for 3 weeks with an injured hand. Don't know if you saw that with John Mateer. Somebody else, Fernando Mendoza, kind of ran up into there. Will Damond Williams, after this game, will he just skymarket into that rocket after this one?
Yeah, I was thinking that. I looked at it actually earlier today. I'll call up Damond Williams here because he's probably still very low. Where is he on that list? He is
40 to 1.
40 to 1, yeah. Because it's Fernando Mendoza's number one. It was at 1.650. It's down to 850. Carson Beck is 11 to 1. Dante Moore is 11 to 1. Then you've got Jeremiah Smith, Marcel Reed, Gunnar Stockton, Jaden Mayava at 14, and then Joey Aguilar. I think, as impressive as Fernando Mendoza in Indiana is, I think there's probably some value on not Indiana, because Indiana still does have to play Penn State and Oregon. Don't get me wrong here. There are tons of ways in which Indiana can make the CFP and potentially lose either one or both of those games, potentially. But in those scenarios, though, Fernando Mendoza does not win the Heisman. I like Dante Moore. I feel like Dante Moore beats Penn State at Penn State. He's the favorite on Monday.
Yeah.
But if Washington upsets Ohio State at home, Damond is 10 to 1? Something like that. That number would absolutely collapse. Yeah.
Yeah. Are you seeing it? Are you, like Duck said, Washington? He thinks Washington will win. Do you have that level of confidence too?
I actually do as well. I've been messing with my mom a bit this week. I had to fix some small bugs. Most of the lines didn't move that much, but this line notably did move. This line is basically, I've got this even now. I've got this 28 all. So this would be technically a dual model play then, and the thing is, to be fair, I was on it already. I got 13.5. But no, I absolutely love this spot. I think, again, it's very difficult for us to evaluate Ohio State. In fact, they played Grambling, and they played Texas. And the thing is, a lot of people, I think Ohio State is probably number one in the AP right now. I don't really care that much. I don't follow the AP that much. But, they shouldn't be, right? We talk about how LSU's win against Clemson looks worse by the day. The win against Texas also keeps looking worse by the day as well, right? Had Texas beat up Sam Houston, okay, Sam Houston doesn't have any wins. Great, good job. Good job, guys. That's the thing, right? So this is the thing. We're acting like this Texas team is this amazing, unstoppable juggernaut just because they were number one originally in the AP. Now, they could still keep winning for a couple weeks. They might actually be able to go undefeated through Red River, right, with Mateer. Now, we're not talking about Red River this week. I'm sure we will in the future. But this is the thing. There are, I don't think Ohio State is nearly as good as you're giving credit for. And again, the fact that this line is 8.5, if a year ago this line would not have been 8.5, it's been 21 last year for sure. Ohio State is, we'd said earlier in the season, we did not think, we said in the preseason, we didn't think Ohio State was nearly as good as it was supposed to be. And I think when and a lot of people thought that too. That was not just, a lot of people did, maybe Ohio State's not that good this year. And the second they beat Texas, everybody said, never mind, we were wrong. Ohio State is just as good as they've ever been. Yeah. But now I think, hey, okay, maybe Texas doesn't look good. And a lot of people are like, oh, man, Texas doesn't look good. But Ohio State, man, they're really good. Not a lot of people make that second-order connection of, oh, okay, the reason we think Ohio State is good is because they beat that Texas team that now we don't think is good. So that's where we're different than the average person here in this case. So we think of that second-order consequence rather than just the first order of, maybe Texas isn't that good.
I also want to point out that Washington, I didn't check K4, but by my metrics, I had them as one of the most unlucky teams in all last season. which kept them safely off the grid. And that's the kind of thing where, AP voters and John Q. Public needs it jammed in their face that last year was aberrational. So this might be the face jamming opportunity. All right. Anything else from you guys on this one?
I think we're good.
Just another fantastic matchup this weekend. Yeah. The slate is loaded.
Yeah, is this a CBS game? Is this a 12:30 Pacific game?
I believe so.
Jeez, man. Okay. With my Trojans, I mean, that's a big day for me. No nap for Mark on Saturday. All right, another headline game. This one just gets lost in the shuffle. LSU at Ole Miss. Ole Miss giving 1.5. As Robert has mentioned several times, that LSU Clemson game is just, the benefit is just deteriorating by the hour here. How about this? Apex is 79 for Garrett Nussmeier. I don't think that wins in the Heisman. If there's any more news about Trinidad Chambliss, any quarterback Ferris State next year, or last year, I've had enough. Congratulations to the young man. Let's kind of go to the next stage here, guys. It's great progress for him. I've heard the story 20 times. Ole Miss just, and this is, unless you're Brian Kelly, right after the Florida win, and you're shocked by this, Ole Miss just clearly has a better defense here by the descriptives here. LSU with a big advantage on the defensive side of the ball. I've got this a 2-point game. Robert's got this a 4-point game, a much higher scoring. This isn't enough for me to bet. This is just, I wanted to bring this up because this is another headline game. The fascinating thing here is just the Ole Miss offense against the LSU defense. Let me just ask you, Duck, who do you like in that matchup of the two here?
We've been waiting for LSU's offense to kind of get off the ground, and it just hasn't seemingly been able to do that. It's just so hard to really know what we're going to see here. Ole Miss really was able to put the clamps down on Tulane defensively last week and just completely smothered the Green Wave really from the start. The Rebels are not nearly as strong as we saw them perform last season. I just don't know necessarily if this is going to be the spot on the road for LSU's offense to break out. LSU offensively, just 127th in pass play explosiveness, 121st in rush play success rate, and we just don't see a lot of the metrics show that this offense is very good right now. They're talented, but they're just not clicking right now. We've seen this team with a propensity to stall out, struggle in drives. Just 5 of 11 red zone trips resulted in touchdowns. This is LSU, and they're not putting the ball in the end zone. They're struggling on early downs, so they're always in third down, and it's just been so jerky. I don't know here. You look at LSU, and they've really relied on their defense to keep them in games and to keep the other teams at bay. They did it against an improving or emerging Louisiana Tech team. They did it against Florida. They did it against Clemson. So the bottom line is LSU has allowed no more than 10 points all season, and I can see this one on the road being a defensive battle that they lean in on their defense. They play conservative offensively. I would play the under here at under 55.
As you were going through that, you gave me about 17 reasons to agree with you. I think aside from the first thing is that I require it as an underplay is I need an elite unit, and LSU's is about as elite as it gets on defense here. So check that box. My total is literally 11 below, which is plenty of margin. I've got a total of 42 here versus 55. And just the way you described that Tulane game, it was like, I don't want to be hyperbolic. I'll say this. I can't see LSU's offense as like significantly better than Tulane's. Tulane's isn't awesome, but it's not like I could look at LSU and say, aha, there's a team that's going to figure this out. That's not the team. So, Robert, explain why your model's spoiling the under party here.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly why the model is pretty high on offense here. I don't know why. I think because Ole Miss was maybe not a high-scoring game with Arkansas, it's saying that maybe Ole Miss's defense isn't that good, and maybe it's going to be able to boost up LSU's offense, because LSU's offense is not particularly good. And also there is some last year Ole Miss offense in there as well, right? So, I don't know.
Gotcha.
I think I do kind of like the under in this play as well. I think the under it's a smart play, I think, because LSU Florida had no chance of ever going over That was never going over anything. It's now maybe LSU. I think they had a bye week. Oh, they didn't have a bye week. They played Southeastern
Southeast.
Louisiana
Yeah.
or something. Yeah, so they didn't have a bye.
Yeah.
They crushed them, but again, it's an FCS team, so that doesn't really matter. I Ole Miss's defense isn't particularly great either. They've been in some pretty high scoring games as well. But the thing is, it's just I don't think I rewatched them in that Florida game. It was their LSU's offense was just very rough. The fact is that the last score of the game happened midway through the third quarter and a pick six, and that was it to get it to 20-10, and that was the last score of the game. That's terrifying based on what we saw from Florida this last week against Miami. Yeah, that makes complete sense. But from an LSU standpoint, what does that mean for this one? I like LSU. Mm-hmm. I like Ole Miss in this game. I'm taking Ole Miss in this game. I think they're the better team. But yeah, I'm gonna take. I think I'll take the under in this. Yeah.
Yeah, and just to go back to Memphis, we mentioned this earlier too. LSU had 23 against Louisiana Tech. Ole Miss's defense is not awesome, but I'm pretty comfortable they've got better players and a better coordinator than the fine folks in Ruston.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. Enough of the headline plays. Now just some of the I'm curious, help me out here, Duck stuff. Not going to dig into this one too much. Utah State getting 22.5 at Vandy. I've got this a 15-point game. Robert has it as a 16-point game. It's not enough to be a dual model play. Utah State is, I don't know how he does it, but Bronco Mendenhall again has this team that was just horrible last year. They're functional. They're actually decent. I think they can keep it within 3 scores. Do you think so, Doc?
The situation would seemingly call for that, with Vanderbilt having to go to Alabama next week, and so there's a chance that they've been peeking ahead. But everything that Vanderbilt has done this season leads me to believe they're going to continue to just give the max effort. We look at Vanderbilt last week. Oh, it looks like Vandy just scored again against Georgia State. 70 points, never took their foot off the gas. Just such an ass whooping in the revenge spot for losing to Georgia State last season. And Diego Pavia explained that he had some media quotes about how growing up, his family couldn't really afford to go to games but once a year, and so he knows there's families out there that do that, and so if this is their one chance to show up, he's going to show up and give max effort for them. And they're all in. Vanderbilt, everything that they are doing, they are completely bought in, and I don't want to step in front of that. The way I would play this game in this specific spot, the way I did play it, is Vanderbilt scored touchdowns on every possession last week. I don't think Utah State is going to be able to really control Vanderbilt offensively with their running scheme and what they want to do in the first half. And eventually Vanderbilt will get their first team platoon out of there and say, okay, let's get on to Alabama. So I took Vanderbilt in the first half. I think that we'll see Utah State generate 0 pass rush. They will not provide any sort of pressure to Diego Pavia, who's completing a high-efficiency pass rate level. Utah State's offense could be in some trouble here against the starting platoon. Vandy's allowing just 2.6 rushing yards per game over the course of the entire season. They do not allow explosive rushes. And Utah State, giving up 16 sacks and 29 tackles for loss this season against that competition. Vandy's coming after him. There's going to be negative plays. He's going to be under duress here. Vanderbilt's 13th in defensive havoc secured, and they have a very sound coverage unit do the doors. The Commodores have a really solid coverage unit. I can see Barnes holding the ball and trying to assess the defense an extra second longer than he should, and I see negative plays. Utah State, if you factor out the FCS opponent, 8 for 38 on third down this season, and God. Vanderbilt's converting just 34%. I don't think Utah State's going to do very well. They did well against A&M in the second half when the starters were out and the game was decided, and there's a chance that could happen here. I want to take the variables of the backdoor cover situation out of it. Vanderbilt's minus 12.5 first half. They should easily be up by more than 2 touchdowns at half. Again, 28-7, 28-3, something like that. And then the second half, garbage time plays out however it plays out. So I'm out on the full game. I took Vanderbilt first half.
Okay, fair. Robert, are you tempted to? I kind of see Utah State as like a wise guy team at some point. Maybe not this week. Are you tempted? Or are you just gonna put the team in your back pocket and maybe hope for a blowout here and bet them later?
I actually do that play of first half Vanderbilt spread. That might be one where, because I'm seeing the spread is 11.5 for the first half. So it might be an interesting thing where you play minus 11.5 for the first half, and then at half, if Vanderbilt's up like 28-7, then you bet like Utah State plus 30 or something at the half, and you could maybe middle that, right? That's probably not a bad idea, because you're right. At a certain point, Vanderbilt's gonna be like, all right, fine, whatever. We got Bama next week. Just let's get out of here. And I think at that point, that's when Utah State's gonna come in and be like, cool, we can go cover the spread. And Vanderbilt's gonna be like, yeah, sure, fine, whatever. We got Bama next week. I will also say that next week, Vanderbilt is 11.5-point underdogs to Alabama. Not to spoil anything. Actually, I will spoil this, I guess, for our viewers. My model has Vanderbilt favored. So,
Wow.
Can you blame it? No, you can't blame my model for that.
Well,
having Vanderbilt.
my model can blame it. Mine wouldn't have it. I do the eyeballs right here. I think I actually probably line up with the market here.
For next week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
If I just eyeball it, yeah. Maybe I book your action, and then I can give you a better vig than minus 110.
Fair.
And that market has adjusted significantly. 2 weeks ago, Vanderbilt was plus 24.5 in the look-ahead line against Alabama. It's 11.5 today.
Wow.
Yeah. A lot of these lines are just absolutely crashed. That's the thing. I've grabbed some 11.5 just now, and I'm going to sit on that and see what comes out next week. Especially, like, if Bama were to beat Georgia, if Bama beats Georgia and that line opens at 13 on Sunday, just unload on Vanderbilt. Just straight up. Because it's going to be a massive letdown spot for Bama after a tough road game at Georgia. And Vanderbilt is just this ridiculous wrecking ball of destiny this year, apparently. Yeah.
I don't think it'll be a letdown. Vandy beat them last year.
Yeah, but I know. Everybody remembers that. Vanderbilt beating Bama and then almost upsetting Texas.
Yeah. All right. A couple more here. Duck, again, this is just please tell me Bowling Green's not going to go over. Ohio's got, and here's why I'm bringing this up. My model has Bowling Green winning this game, which just made me just depressed here. Ohio's got to win this one. Just tell me they're going to get the W. I'm not even worried about the giving 10.5 against Bowling Green. They have to win. They have a good quarterback this year. They have like the best quarterback in the MAC with Finn out, right?
Yeah, and the way I look at this is that Bowling Green has performed significantly better than expected against Power 4 opponents, but they did so while those games were already decided. They did well in the second half in the late stages against Cincinnati and Louisville, but the outcome of those games had already been decided. They scored one offensive touchdown against Lafayette, and they played Liberty, who is absolute hot garbage this year. And I'm still not impressed with Bowling Green. Now, as we speak, Bowling Green is getting steamed. That line is down to 7.5.
Oh my gosh.
And the movement has happened in the last 15 minutes. So while we've been recording, somebody is steaming BG. I already played Ohio minus 9.5. I don't understand where. I haven't seen any news come across my desk. I don't know what is going on as far as the movement. But BG is getting steamed here. So somebody knows something that we don't know. That doesn't happen very often with us.
I kind of throw my hands up at Bowling Green. This is almost like Dan Lanning's first year at Oregon, where they burned the script right away. They've got to start losing, right, Robert? Please.
One thing we're forgetting is Bowling Green has that cap, right? It's a cute cap, whatever. It's all good, but no, I don't know. My model seems right for this game, but very low total. I've got 40-something-ish total. That seems low comparatively. You've got a tie game. I'm curious to see what happens. Again, we're not at Maction yet. When we hit Maction, our models usually are pretty strong on Maction. So maybe Bowling Green is okay. Ohio did pretty well against Rutgers, which was a little surprising at the time. So Ohio should be favored here, but maybe Bowling Green is somewhat legit.
Yeah, I think now that I think about it, Navarro had great numbers against Rutgers, and my model just thinks that Rutgers' defense is really bad, so maybe that's getting a downgrade there. Again, Drew Pine is the quarterback for Bowling Green, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah.
I mean, come on, guys. Okay. Don't do this to me, Ohio. Please win. All right. One more here. Liberty at Old Dominion, just to hit on the theme that we've talked about. Duck just hit on it now. Liberty's just bad. Now Ethan Vasco's out. Old Dominion I actually have as the top-rated team in the Sun Belt as well. That close-ish effort against Indiana is aging quite nicely. That's probably what's going on here. I've got this a 23-point game. Robert's got it a 15-point game right on the number. Robert's number and Robert's model assumes that Ethan Vasco is still in the game.
I'll just double check that, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, it does. It does.
That's I think Old Dominion's getting overlooked. I think you've got a double overlooked here. I think the market's really slow on Old Dominion. We knew that what's his name? Is it Colton Joseph? We knew he could run. He's actually like passing the ball a lot better this year than last year too. And I guess people don't want to give up on Liberty. They're still believing in Liberty before Robert Stuck actually killed the whole program here. So a lot of points, but I kind of am okay giving that many. What do you think, Duck?
It is difficult to. I think it's 17 now, but it's difficult to lay it with ODU here just because it's not a role they're familiar with. And so to ask them to win by 3 touchdowns is possibly just so foreign to this program. But Liberty's awful, and it goes far deeper than the quarterback. It's the defensive play. They can't complete a pass. They can't catch. Special teams has been middling. Situational coaching has been just puzzling. Liberty is a complete mess, and it's stunning to see. They have the most resources in Conference USA. They have rich donors that spend the money. They have great facilities. I don't understand what the issue is, but it's very shocking. I will say that it's an in-state rivalry. Maybe both teams are up for it. I really don't know how I would cap this game because it was just so off my radar. But Old Dominion had such a program-defining win at Virginia Tech before the bye week, and they were up, I think, 38-0 against Virginia Tech. It was unreal how badly they walloped Virginia Tech, which led to Virginia Tech firing their head coach. I don't know. I would be led to be assumed that they're going to be focused, that they're going to be ready to go after the bye week because it is still a regional in-state rivalry, but probably a lot of patting themselves on the back after destroying Virginia Tech, big brother there at Old Dominion. So could be a little bit sleepwalkish. I don't know what to do with this one. It's just so puzzling. Okay. Probably best, in my opinion. This is one where you either watch the game as a fan or you don't, and you just read the AP Wire report afterwards and see what happens.
You're assuming it's on TV, but Robert's got a hook up overseas that can take care of that. So
people are streaming them on YouTube. Yeah,
he can also teach you how to draw trees and stuff too. Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything that Duck. I can't disagree with anything he said. I still like the angle here of overrated Liberty and overlooked Old Dominion, I guess I'd say. Although he does make a good point about up to 17. That's a lot of points to give. Do you maybe just chop these up and look to play both sides about overrated and overlooked later, Robert?
Yeah, ODU is very interesting, right? It's a close game against Indiana, which at the time was like, people were like, uh-oh, is Indiana not good this year? And it turns out, no, Old Dominion actually is just amazing. Like, that's the thing, right? At the time, we're like, oh, they should crush them. But no, actually, Old Dominion's good. And then the absolute beatdown of Virginia Tech, dovetailing off of what Duck said, I looked at my phone and I saw that score, and it wasn't even the final. Like, it was like midway through the game, and they were up like 29-0 or whatever. And I'm like, oh, they're firing Brett Key. He's done now. That's it. He's gonna get fired. That was not even. It was. There's no other thoughts.
Brett Pry got fired.
Yeah, not Brett Key. Yes, it's basically the same name, but no. Like, the second I saw that, I didn't even know their thoughts are just like, oh, he's getting fired this week. I was like, it's done. He's getting fired immediately. Like, he's getting fired. That was the first thought that went in my head, and he did, like, the next day. But no, Liberty is, I don't know what's wrong with this team. They should not be this bad, but they are, and Old Dominion is just good. There's been a lot of times where we've loved to bet Old Dominion as, like, underdogs and stuff. And, like, normally they'd probably be at least a score, maybe score and a half underdog in this game. They're a 2-score favorite, over a 2-score favorite. And that's nuts. Liberty is just in really dire straits here, especially the starting quarterback is gone. They've got a ton of problems to fix, out of which is obviously, of course, replacing starting quarterbacks. Yeah, I don't necessarily hate a play on this. Maybe an underplay, or maybe not an underplay, maybe an overplay, or just the spread play here isn't that bad at all. I think my model does have Ethan Vasco. So if you're looking at a basically backup quarterback, first road start, that's not fun, especially in apparently a good Old Dominion. Yeah, I think honestly, it's not a bad idea to just throw something on the minus 15.5 here.
Okay, fair. This is one of those ones where I might just wake up Saturday and see I have a play on this one, unbeknownst to me. So, all right, a couple of quacks here. Questions for Ducks.
If you don't mind,
please.
I've got all the time in the world tonight, so I want to do Ask Duck. I want to get into. I need to go back and listen to the regular preview. Did you cover the Thursday night game between Army and ECU?
No. You want to bring that up?
I want to bring it up, and then after you guys give me your position, I'll tell you why I want to bring it up. But I'd love to know what you guys think about Army at East Carolina tomorrow night.
We have... Okay, interesting. This number looks right on to my model. I don't know. East Carolina seems... If I'm going off the grid first with the intangibles, I think East Carolina is a little volatile. Is that a fair characterization? Up and down a bit for the Pirates here?
Last year. This year has been better, but it looked terrible against BYU. There was 2 plays that game changed that one.
Yeah, so I'm not sure what I have here. The model has ECU by 4, the total of 58. So if I do the math here really quick, it is the actually common football score of 31-27 in favor of East Carolina. That's what I got. And here's the thing. I love North Texas this year, and my buddy said he liked Q-Dog, I think it was. He said he liked North Texas, and I said, I'm very squeamish, very, very squeamish fading the academies even in a average year. And who knows, I have no idea what Army is this year. So I cannot play it, but that's kind of what my model and my brain tells me. What about you, Robert?
I've got East Carolina minus 8.7. I've got 23-14, something like that. Caitlin Hauser, like 237 passing yards, 2-ish touchdowns. Army being that competitive with North Texas did surprise me a little last week. But to be fair, they did have a massive lead in that game, and Army came back a lot in that game, and that can happen sometimes, right? If you're behind, you just bomb passes, and sometimes you just catch those, right? I don't know. It was a bit concerning to me that Army was that good. If I had to make a play East Carolina, but I don't think I'm going to make a play on this game. What are your thoughts on this one?
I think I know where you're going with this. Does it have to be with... Is it a variable on the Army side? Let me just ask you that, Duck.
Well, there's still questions on if Dwayne Coleman is going to start or if he's injured. And I do have a play on this game. I did play East Carolina. I think when I look at these two teams and where they were at in the middle of the second quarter last week, North Texas was up 28-7, and they were up by a significant margin the entire second half. Twice North Texas had the ball up double digits, going to potentially extend to a 3-score lead, and they couldn't do it. Army didn't play very well, and they came back at the end, and it went to overtime, and it got real hairy, but North Texas was the better team for the majority of that game. East Carolina was the better team for the majority of the first half against BYU. It was 6-3. They were throwing into the end zone to take the lead. They threw a pick. And then at the very end of the first half, there was 20 seconds left. For some reason, they threw a pass out of their own end zone, backed up. It gets intercepted, and the guy takes 3 steps and walks it into the end zone. You're down 13-3, and you probably outplayed BYU. So misleading finals on both sides. I like ECU here. I laid it. But the main reason I asked you this is yours truly will be attending that game in person tomorrow. And I'm really excited to go out to Dowdy-Ficken Stadium and see that game tomorrow night in Greenville.
Very nice. Also in your favor, Army on the short week. It's not like this is a Thursday night road game off a bye, which is how they usually do it for the money programs. Army drawing the short straw for a conference game too at that. Man.
Back-to-back conference games. Yeah,
Americans showing no love for the Army schedule here. Yeah, that's a rough spot. I just again, I unless my model's just punching me in the face, say fade this academy, it scares the heck out of me. just it's such a unique thing. Who can defend it and who can't? Let me ask you this then: any strong feeling on basically ECU defense against that Army scheme?
ECU saw the scheme last year, but Army has so little explosiveness offensively. They don't have a propensity to get the chunk plays. They don't have the game-changing players offensively like they had last season. They struggle in offensive success rate, in rush play success rate, and they have had to, against Tarleton State, Kansas State, and North Texas, they have had to come back against each of those three teams by throwing the ball. They cannot rely on the traditional flex bone Jeff Monken triple option. We're going to bleed you into the ground with the fullback dive and the QB ISO. It doesn't happen that way. They've had to throw their way back into games.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's a lot different offense than what we've come to know and love over the years with Army.
I'm guessing this is probably the first conference road game too. Would have to be, right? Since they couldn't already have played two conference games.
Yeah, first conference road trip.
Yeah.
A little bit. Now I will say this about my I've got a thing about the first conference road trip. I do have that, but the only exception perhaps could be the service academies because of the way that their entire life is regimented every 5 minutes that they're alive. So it's like they're so regimented and buttoned up in everything they do that I think if there is a bunch that can handle like a little bit of the weathering the storm, it's the troops.
Yeah, very fair. Very fair. All right, cool. Enjoy that game. That's really cool. All right, a couple of quacks here. Are we rethinking Buffalo? I've got two really bad data points here. They were life and death with Kennesaw State, which we were happy to say everybody has one. And then they lose to Troy. I don't want to believe, and again, this is almost like Duck tell me Troy's not going to be good this year. Is Buffalo, are they not a MAC threat anymore?
They're 1-0 in league play. And the MAC games that they have coming down the pipe are Eastern Michigan, who has an atrocious defense, UMass, who has an atrocious defense, Akron, who has an atrocious defense. They have some time to figure it out before they hit the major players. Miami of Ohio looks way, way down. Whether or not they make the conference championship game is still going to come down to the last game of the season where they host Ohio University, and they still may have already locked up a spot. So I'm not willing to push the panic button yet. I'm going to tell you right now, I had Troy's team total under 19.5, and that was one of the worst beats I've had in a long time. Troy had 6 first downs in the first 3 quarters and 0 points. And with 10 minutes to go, they scored 3 touchdowns. I was stunned. Frankly, it was a collapse. I was absolutely stunned. These guys have to be looking at each other, sitting in front of the whiteboard with nothing on it, saying, what did we just do, and how did that just happen? I gave them a free pass against Kent State when they showed up thinking they were just going to roll in there and sleepwalk through a 30-point win, and clearly I thought that was the wake-up call. They better wake up, because otherwise it's going to be trouble. And the Connecticut game really doesn't matter now because they have 2 losses. They're not going to the college football playoff as the G5 representation. They could have, with a Minnesota loss that was respectable, had they run the table, like you could convince your team, yeah, we're going to be the G5 representation. I'm not saying they would have, but they could have. But now with 2 losses, it's okay, let's regroup and focus on MAC play. So I don't even care what happens against Connecticut. Get the quarterback healthy, get the defense to pull their head out and regroup and go back to the cornerstones of what your defense is. And no, I don't think it's time to push the panic button yet. But man, that was bad on Saturday. Bad.
Yeah, that was at Buffalo too, right?
Yes, and just Troy. I'm just no goose, no gander with Troy. Goose Crowder is hurt. He had surgery. He's out for some time.
There we go.
The quarterback situation is very bad. It was I believe it was completely a mirage.
Okay. Hoping so. Thank you. I'm kind of presuming something in this next question. I'll just say, and I referred to this vaguely before, I have Arizona as like a top 10 defense. And this one, it struck me out of nowhere, but when I look back, it didn't come out of nowhere. because I just missed that their new defensive coordinator is Danny Gonzalez, who is, in my book, a made man as a defensive coordinator. I think he was like the best defensive coordinator that Rocky Long had at San Diego State. Arizona's kind of figured it out on offense to a degree too. I think this team is completely overlooked. I'm going to phrase a question one way, and you can pat me on the head and say, that's cute, you're completely wrong. Is this market just missing Arizona? Or am I just kind of way off in psychedelics and mind-expanding drugs land?
They play at 11 o'clock Eastern, so a lot of people probably haven't seen Arizona play a ton of football. And just not really a lot of high-profile games with Hawaii and Weber State. And then by the time they played Kansas State, people were already throwing the red flags up on Kansas State saying these guys are garbage. So there's a couple things situationally where they haven't had a lot of the marquee teams come in to create a lot of eyeballs on them. But this defense is nasty. They shut down the run. They're locked down against the pass, surrendering only about 125 pass yards per game, less than 50% completions, 0 touchdowns against through the air, and 5 INTs. This bunch is allowing 22% successful third down conversions, 9 for 40. And in the red zone, the defense has bowed up in the red zone six trips against, which is actually in 3 games. That's pretty good. 6 trips against, 1 red zone touchdown. This defense is nasty.
Yep.
And I'll say this for the listeners at home too. Like, we really don't compare a lot of notes. We're not looking for groupthink. No. If there's a disagreement, I'll happily say it. I think this defense is nasty. I have already bet Iowa State's team total under 27.5. And I think Arizona can win that game on the field this weekend. I think they are very underrated and just not really quite talked about yet. When you look at what they have coming down the pipe, when you look at Arizona and what they have next, this road, if they win on the road, they could start to garner some attention. Should beat Oklahoma State at home. You get BYU who comes in. Now that kind of looks like more of a winnable as maybe preseason, we're thinking it's probably a BYU road win, but golly, that BYU game looks winnable. They could be 6-0. And then you get into some of the rest of your Big 12 schedule, but could be a really good season in the wings here for Arizona.
I think, Robert, was it this week or last week you said, hey, Arizona at 25-1 is not the worst it's not the worst value in the world in the Big 12, right?
Yeah. No, I really like Arizona. I've bet Arizona already this week. I think I have either a tie game or Arizona's favorite, I think. Let me just check that.
Well, there was a wrong team favorite.
Yeah,
we both have
right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, no, I bet Arizona this week. What are they for the conference here? 1 second here. Big 12. Arizona is 22-1. So very similar.
Yeah.
The Big 12 is, we're in the, it's, okay, with some exceptions. Oklahoma State, it's anybody's game right now at this point. It's okay, you want to make a case for Utah? Sure, okay, and lost some steam. But you want to make a case for Texas Tech? Sure. You want to make a case for Arizona State? Sure. You want to make a case for Kansas, BYU, Baylor, Houston even, Iowa State, Arizona. There's a lot. TCU.
TCU, yeah. It goes deep, man.
There's a lot of options here, right? I think there is probably just value in taking shots on the underdogs here. I'm not sure how good Utah actually is based off of that result there on from Texas Tech, but I would not bet. Texas Tech is the favorite at 2-1. That's wrong. Don't bet. That's clearly not right. TCU is still, I think they're 6-1. That still feels low. Kansas 13-1. Arizona 22-1. Oklahoma State is somehow still on the board at 300-1. That's actually too high. What number?
Add another 0 to that.
Yeah, add a couple zeros to that. Yeah, it shouldn't be on the board. Why do you even? This is free money. What path is there for them to win the Big 12? And they're technically 0-0 in conference play, so technically they're okay. But yeah, I don't think that's happening though. But no, this is the thing, right? So just start taking shots on these teams like Arizona, TCU. The way you can play it is the fact that someone will win a big game, and then all of a sudden they'll jump up to be like one of the top favorites. So then just bet the other teams that aren't, because eventually those teams that won will lose, and then you'll get added value.
corner.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can corner the market. And I would bet Utah right now. Dampier was hurt. They already came out and said he was hurt in the Wyoming game. He didn't play his best football. Utah is far from eliminated. And I'll go on record and say every Big 12 team will have at least 2 losses this season. Every one of them will have at least 2. And the champ might have 3 losses. So nobody's of the major players is truly eliminated. And while I don't think they're going to win it, and I don't really think they have a chance to turn their season around at this point, even K-State is not eliminated. K-State, if they were to find it and rattle through their schedule, it's going to all come down to tiebreakers. We're going to have 5 teams with the same record. So then what do the tiebreakers say? Or do they just flip quarters? That's what we got to figure out is what the tiebreakers come down to, because that's where you need to do it. But I said this in the summer, and I wholeheartedly agree. You see a team that loses, then you can bet them at significantly worse odds, and they'll find their way to be back into that mix. And the Big 12 is really no different here. Arizona State's a player. Baylor hasn't looked overly good. They can still make some noise. Houston could make some noise. There's a lot of teams that could really do some damage here in this league. Other than Kansas. I think Kansas will have 5 losses.
Wow. Oh, that was mean. 2 things. First of all, it's funny. Like, I said the same exact thing. I said, this is a tiebreaker conference. This is absolutely a tiebreaker conference. I was so confident coming in the season that Arizona State was going to win, and my case was this is the only complete team that I see that is really good on both sides of the ball. I have to put Arizona in that discussion too, and TCU. I think those 3 have me most convinced on both sides of the ball. And still, I would be surprised if one of the 2 title contender or title game entrants is not outside that group of 3. This is crazy. This is what was so good about Texas and OU leaving this conference is like this is so competitive. It's exactly how it should be.
Can you have going into Thanksgiving like 6 teams at 5-1 to win the conference?
Yeah. well, you will have like every there's 16 teams in this conference, or is it 14? I forget. Is it 16? It's 16, right?
I want to say it's 16. Yeah.
Yeah. That last weekend, there's going to be like 5 or 6 meaningful games in the conference.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, it's going to be nuts. This is how it should be. As many things get screwed up in this game, this airplane landed cleanly. So, all right. Anything else from you 2?
No, I'm good. I cut you off, Duck. You were going to say something about.
No, I was just thinking is all. I think that pretty well covers it tonight.
Yeah, I think we're good.
All right. Cool. All right. Well, thank you both. Thank you, everybody, for hanging in there. If you're still with us, 1 hour and 54, almost 55 minutes in. We appreciate you listening and watching. We appreciate the comments on YouTube and the DMs to me. It makes me feel very important, beloved, and kind of smart. We appreciate it. Good luck this weekend, and we will talk to you guys on Monday. Until then, be well.